The image spread like wildfire, leaping from screen to screen, a digital plague. No one knew its origin, it just appeared, a mosaic of jarring colors and fractal patterns. The caption was simple yet chilling. Look for 10 seconds, see for 10 days. Most dismissed it as a hoax, another internet oddity.
Seen this? Creepy, huh?
Yeah, right. Like I'm gonna stare at that thing.
Neil, ever the skeptic, was one of them. But curiosity gnawed at him. He found himself drawn back to the image, its bizarre geometry holding a strange allure. Against his better judgment, Neil decided to look. 10 seconds, that was all it would take. He stared, counting each second. The colors seemed to writhe, the patterns shifting subtly. A mild headache began to form. 9, 10. Neil quickly clicked away, shaking his head at his own foolishness. It was just an image, nothing more. Minutes later, Neil noticed something odd. A faint after-image lingered in his vision, a ghostly echo of the fractal pattern. He blinked, expecting it to vanish. It didn't. It remained, a constant presence in his field of view. Unease began to prickle at the edges of his composure. He tried focusing on his work, losing himself in lines of code, but the after-image persisted, growing more vivid as the day wore on. It pulsed with a faint internal luminescence, casting an unsettling glow over everything he saw. A knot of anxiety tightened in Neil's stomach. This was more than a simple afterimage. As evening descended, the afterimage intensified, the colors deepened, taking on a sickly, fluorescent hue. The shadows in his apartment seemed to twist and writhe, contorting into unnatural shapes at the edge of his vision. Neil tried to shake off the growing fear, telling himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him. But deep down, a chilling certainty took root. He had made a mistake. The next morning, the afterimage hadn't faded. It was stronger, more intrusive. The fractal patterns pulsed and shifted, forming shapes. He saw shadowy figures lurking at the periphery of his vision. Their eyes, twin points of malevolent white, watched him. Panic welled up inside Neil. He tried to tell himself it was just a hallucination, but it was growing stronger, feeding on his fear. As the day progressed, the visions intensified. The shadowy figures grew bolder, stepping out of his peripheral vision and into his direct line of sight. Their forms flickered like flames, struggling to maintain their shape, their movements jerky and unnatural. Neil felt a constant gnawing dread, a sense of being watched by something ancient and malevolent. Sleep offered no escape. The shadowy figures invaded his dreams, their whispers slithering into his mind, speaking of things that chilled him to the bone. He woke up every few hours in a cold sweat, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest.
They're getting worse, man. I can't shake them. I see them everywhere I look. They're watching me.
Desperate, Neil messaged Simon again, his words frantic. This time, Simon's reply was different.
Where are you? I'm coming over.
For the first time since this nightmare began, a flicker of hope sparked within Neil. Maybe Simon could help. Simon's message was a lifeline. Neil clung to it, the promise of his friend's arrival a beacon in the encroaching darkness. He gave Simon his address, his fingers trembling as he typed. He glanced nervously at the shadows in the corner of his room, half expecting them to lunge at him. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Every tick of the clock seemed to amplify the oppressive silence of his apartment. He could feel his sanity fraying at the edges, his grip on reality loosening with every passing moment. He just had to hold on until Simon arrived. Simon would know what to do. Finally, a sound pierced through the oppressive silence, a frantic pounding on his front door. Relief washed over Neil, so potent it almost brought him to his knees.
Simon!
He yelled, his voice hoarse. He fumbled with the locks, his hands slick with sweat. As he flung open the door, Simon rushed in, eyes wide with concern.
Neil, what's going on? Are you all right?
Simon asked, his voice edged with worry. Neil tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He just pointed at his eyes, then back at the shadows. Simon followed his gaze, his brow furrowed in confusion.
I don't see anything, Neil.
Neil stared at his friend, a chilling realization dawning on him. The shadowy figures hadn't vanished. They were still there, watching, waiting, but Simon couldn't see them. It was then that Neil understood the horrifying truth. The afterimage wasn't a curse, it was a window, a portal into a realm he had inadvertently opened.